The analog project kind of serves as a good segue into the archive has no legs, because it kind of concentrates your work into a digital realm. Like you have finally like
Correct.
cataloged all your work on a digital scale. If you could start with just giving us a context of the work, and where that impulse to digitally catalog everything came from, that would be like a good start.
Well, when I lived in New York for about 16 years, I used to photograph my friends. And I used to photograph my time in New York over those years. And as I kept photographing, I realized these images and prints that I'd made, and the negatives, and the little 4x6 prints that I'd gotten done in labs had accumulated into a space of 10 trunks. And I realized that I was moving these trunks from city to city. And it was becoming overwhelming. And I realized the only way I could actually get a sense of the work was to, in fact, digitize this. And because it was becoming so overwhelming, and I didn't know how to store this work anymore, or where to store it. And I couldn't actually physically open up the trunks to go through these negatives. So about 2 years ago, or in 2019, November, December, I was in Goa, and I spent many months just scanning these negatives. And I'd wanted to do this for many years, but I didn't know how to come up with a system, and I resisted. And as I started looking at various archives, I realized that I had to come up with my own system. And I started to sort of find a way to catalog this work by giving you these codes and these numbers. So I spent basically a month and a half, 2 months scanning these negatives. And as I started scanning this work, I started scanning all my work, because I realized I wanted to get access to it. I wanted to be able to see these images very quickly. And they're not high-res scans. They're basically low-res scans when I can view them very quickly and make an edit if I want to. And it's actually helped me very much, because as I've started to make my dummy books, I've been able to go into these images, pull what I want out of it, do an edit, and realize and say, look, I really like this image. Let me get this high-res scanned. And I know where to find the image now, because I know what trunk it goes in, what folder it's in, what sleeve it's in, and what negative number the image is. And I've been able to get that scanned and make these dummy books. So with the New York work, basically I have, 16 years of images. A lot of it is film. Actually, a lot of it is film, and some of it is digital. And so I wanted to sort of create a space where, with this, the archive has no legs, I wanted to create a space where it was sort of like a performance. It was sort of like an exhibition, and it was trying to also create like my own workspace. So I wanted to give people a sense of what my space would look like as I'm working, and as I'm archiving my work, and also as I'm editing this work. So this idea for 5 million incidents came out of that space.
And how did the process unfold over the week that you were stationed in that room?
Well, what I wanted to do was I wanted to give the audience a sense of the room, or the sense of what my space would look like, what my editing space would be. So I set up the space with my scanner, with a projector. I mean, obviously my studio wouldn't have had a projector, but as the audience is there, I wanted to see on the screen what my archive looks like. So I had set up 2 projectors, one which has my whole archive, and I don't know, it had tens of thousands of images on there. So the audience could go through, see this on through a laptop, and as they're viewing, the other audience who are there can see it on the wall and see how I've archived my work. So I wanted to work with my New York images, because that's a very extensive collection, and so I had made my own edit of about 212 images, and I put these images on the table, and I wanted people to come in and do an edit of this work. The thing is, this work is so familiar to me that the way I would edit it would be very different than what someone outside would see it. And I wanted to see how someone coming in would look at the work, how they would look at the work. So I wanted to create a space for them to edit this work and then to make books out of it. Now, I didn't want to make just one book. Over the course of 4 or 5 days, I wanted to create multiple books. And how could I do that? That would mean that I would have people come in over the course of 1 day, do an edit of the work, and put it up on the wall. Now, one person comes in, does an edit. someone else comes in and does an edit on top of that. So the thing is, the first edit doesn't ever go away. They always leave a mark on the wall. And so as more people come in, they do multiple edits. Something of theirs remains on the wall. At the end of the day, whatever is up on the wall, I make into a book. And yes, there were some certain guidelines. I asked them to make double spreads. So I asked them to make 2 images per page and up to 50 images or 60 images, 70 images, but it had to be a set number. And end of the day, whatever edit remained on the wall, I would send off to the printer with the high-res images, and the book would come back the next day. The reason also I wanted people to do this is because I didn't want them to just look at the work, look at me in the process of editing and scanning. I want them to be sort of to also participate in the process. And so I did this over the course of 4 days, and I came with 4 different versions. So there are 4 different books. And what was interesting is certain images, certain spreads repeat themselves. And what I actually did was every day after the edit was done, I would remove these images and I put them back on the table. So it wasn't like someone had already seen those images before or seen a certain spread. They were starting fresh. And to see certain spreads repeat themselves was an indication to me that, hey, certain layouts, certain juxtapositions do work together, or that's what the audience is drawn to. And it makes me rethink of how I would want to re-edit this work. And that was a really good exercise for me to get people involved and for me to then see how I could, or how I might see the work, and maybe the idea that what they had made could in fact work. So that was what was interesting.
That makes me wonder, because most of your work was on film, and it comes from an analog history of having taken photographs across geographical scales, right? So, and now you are archiving them on a digital platform. So I'm just wondering how you deal with this negotiation between the analog and the digital in terms of archiving, and if the digital cataloging is as laborious a process as, say, waiting in a darkroom.
Well, I can say from my own experience of scanning my images and spending maybe 6 to 8 months scanning this work. And this is like 10 chunks of negatives. And it's mind numbing because the thing is, a lot of this film was, it wasn't just rolls of film that I shot, it was bulk loaded film. So I would buy 100 roll for the film and I would bulk load it to separate canisters. So these numbers on the negatives don't always correlate. And so I had to add, when I scanned this work, I actually had to match the negative number to the scan, which meant that every image that existed digitally, if I go back into my trunks to find it, I should be able to find that image, which means that everything had to go into an Excel sheet. And everything had to go in individual folders for every roll of film that had been shot. And so every image has a unique number. It isn't a bulk number. Every image, every negative has a unique number. So every digital scan has a unique number, which is extremely laborious. It is painful because I want to be able to make it so that when I go back to find that image, I can find it. And so it's not someplace where you can actually be sort of lazy about it. You're extremely diligent because I do. And also the thing is, over time, as months and years go by, you want to look at your cataloging system and understand that when you go back, you can find that image. And if I don't look at this filing system for 6 months, I won't be able to go back and find an image after 6 months or after a year. It shouldn't be a space where I go back and suddenly realize that it doesn't make any sense to me. And so, yes, it is extremely difficult. But now that it's done, it's great. And I actually am very happy it's digitized. The thing is, in an ideal situation, I would high-res scan all my images. But the thing is, this is only about cataloging. And it's also about digital space, right? I mean, I don't sit with a 20, 30, 50 TB of data on my hard drive or external hard drives where I can high-res scan this work. The thing is, if I was to high-res scan every image, it would take me years and years to do this. Because these are just low-res scans for me to get quick access to, I can go back and do it very quickly. I still have about 5,000 images that I had to scan. And I've been just mulling over it because it just takes so much time and headspace to do this. Um, so yes, it is a real process, but it's been actually really enjoyable because I love the idea of opening up a folder and finding images on there. In fact, since you brought the darkroom, I was looking for some images that I wanted to print. And I went through my digital files and I found these 6x6 negatives and 35 negatives that I wanted to print to the darkroom. And I went in, I found these digital files and I went through my trunks and I found the images within an hour or half an hour. I knew exactly what trunk to get into, I knew what folder they were in and what sleeve those negatives were in. And that was a beautiful moment, knowing that my filing system worked. And it is hard. I mean, it's the idea with print. I mean, printing is also very hard, but printing also has enormous gratification. It's a very slow process, but I still love the idea of taking those negatives out, finding them through my archive, and going to the darkroom making prints from it. And what's interesting is those prints look so different than what I would have made, say, 5 or 10 years ago, because I feel like I changed as a printer. You know, I feel like looking at work over the many, many years, I think my idea of what a print looks like has also changed. I mean, I remember many years ago, I used to make negatives that were extremely contrasty, make prints that were extremely contrasty. And a friend of mine just sat me through some work that he had made. And we had a long chat about printing. And the way I started printing after that changed the way my images looked. And even now when I print, it's a very different way. It's not laborious, it's not detailed, but I still get the desired results. So basically I had a darkroom from the years of 1997 to 2013. And from 2013 to 2020, I didn't have a darkroom. And I really missed the process. I really missed going in the darkroom and making my own images, my own prints. And, but of course, I hadn't stopped looking at images over those years. And I've seen the work of other photographers. So I also feel like the way I print has changed. And obviously getting back in the darkroom, it was a bit of a learning curve, but once I got in, I think all those skills came back to me. But also the way I printed changed because I think I'm not so detailed as I used to be. And it's not like I take shortcuts, but I've lessened the burden, I've lessened the load of printing or lessened the effort that it takes to make print, but still getting the desired results. And that's based on learnings from friends of mine who are photographers, who are printers. And also always having them as guides, you know, because every time I have a problem, I actually contact my friend Charles, who's an amazing, amazing printer. And he kind of runs me through my situation and advises me. And this is someone who's been printing for the last 30 years and who has so much more experience than I do. So he's always there for me to bounce ideas off. So yeah, the way I print has definitely changed over the years.
Just one last question about this project. What's the idea behind naming it The Archive Has No Legs?
Yeah, I named it, I think the title comes from the idea that because it was such an effort to transport this material. You know, when I lived in New York, I moved these negatives from New York to London. I moved these trunks and all my stuff from London to Delhi. Then I moved all the work from Delhi to Bombay. And then I moved all the stuff from Bombay back to Delhi. And I realized how much effort it took to move them. You know, it wasn't like I had just a folder full of images or negatives. I had 10 trunks. And there's always this trepidation, always this fear that something would get lost. And so it was the idea that it's sort of like this archive isn't exactly movable. You know, it has to be somewhere stationary. But it can't be because wherever I go, this work has to travel with me because I need access to it. And it's not the easiest to transport. And so I think the title came from that idea.
Hey, thanks for walking me through this project as well.